Next content example, a personal experience. A final illustration that progress always involves a loss occurred in my own personal experience building houses in Mexico with my church group. Now once again, look at how we moved from the third paragraph to the fourth. We said a final illustration that. What do we call that piece? Transition. Mark of a good writer. Transitions. And then what do? After the transition, we
restate the thesis.
Restate the thesis. Every paragraph, restate the thesis. Very important. Shows the reader your own message, increases your word count. And we know we have to get that word count up. So a final illustration that progress always involves a loss occurred in my own personal experience building houses in Mexico with my church group. During the summer of my junior year in high school, comma, what's that called when I have a long lead in before I get to the main sentence?
Subordination.
Here we go. Is it okay to use I now?
Yes.
Because it's a personal experience. In general, you're going to use we when you're talking about external events, but once it becomes personal, I is fine. So I traveled with a small group to Guadalajara? Sure. Mexico City?
Sure.
Yeah. Guaymas? Yeah, does it matter? No, just fill in the details with your imagination. To help construct low-income housing for the poor. At first, comma, transition. At first, I was appalled at the extent of the poverty around me and longed to return home to enjoy the rest of my summer lounging by the swimming pool. Or you're throwing the readers a little softball here that you're going to hit backwards out of the park by reversing the idea and telling them that what? However, transition, however, these thoughts soon departed when we finally got to work. Arranged in teams, comma, what's that called?
Subordination.
We developed a sense of common purpose and community spirit while helping those less privileged than ourselves. You can almost hear the violins in the background. Consequently, what do we call that? The T word.
Transition.
Transition. Consequently, I learned the value of hard work and group sacrifice. As our church leader remarked, quote, unquote, you give up a little in order that other people may gain a lot. What a nice little quote from a church group leader who conceivably could have been entirely imaginary. Exactly. You too can have church leaders that make these pithy little quotes and throw them into your SAT essay. In fact, the entire personal experience was constructed out of imagination. The guy didn't go to Mexico, he just made it up. And what did he include by making it up? He included details, he has great subordination, he has excellent transitions, and it sounds like an excellent writing job, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter that it wasn't real. No, it's the writing that counts. And you can fashion any kind of personal experience you want with your imagination. And this really opens up the playing field for students because writers always hate to see blank pages. They don't know what to write about. You guys can make stuff up as you go along, which allows you to expand the playing field and make the game a lot more interesting and a lot more doable. If you're not constrained by facts, you can let your imagination soar and you can let your writing style express itself freely, which is the point of the SAT essay. And now for our conclusion. I'm just going to wrap things up. As I mentioned earlier, the conclusion is probably the easiest part of your essay because you're just going to recap what you've already talked about, your content examples, and recap the topic sentence one more time. So, as seen in these historic, literary, and personal experience examples, nice transition, as seen in. Every advance is accompanied by inevitable suffering. We're just recapping the topic sentence one more time. And then a little flourish, throw in a couple more sentences if you can. However, with perseverance and planning, even the worst setbacks can be overcome. Nice word, setbacks, bad things. Instead of saying bad things happening, you say setbacks. And then another flourish. This notion is particularly relevant to our lives today because the world is undergoing change at an alarming rate. As Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, quote, you may be disappointed if you fail, but you are doomed if you don't try. Are you guys all familiar with that famous quote from Franklin D? Yeah? No? Well, in fact, he never said it. He never said it. In fact, it's from an opera singer, Beverly Sills. Now, who sounds more impressive to the readers? An opera singer like Beverly Sills or a go-to guy like FDR?
FDR.
So I'm going to throw it at FDR because he's going to be more impressive to the readers. Does it have to be accurate and factual? No. It has to sound good and show that you've got command of the writing genre. So, quotes. don't have to be accurate. They can actually be completely manufactured and made up. And in fact, I've got a whole chapter in my book, chapter 6, which talks about various quotes and how you can incorporate them into your SAT essays. And if you can't find a real quote to incorporate, you can always just what?
Make it up.
Make up your own quote. Exactly. As hundreds of my students have done with great success. It's the writing that matters. It's the construction of the sentences that matter. It's not the factual accuracy or the historical representation. Now, that was a fairly elaborate personal experience. The guy goes to Mexico, he does with a church leader, he's got the houses and everything else. It doesn't have to be an elaborate personal experience. It can be a real simple one. So I want to do one more personal experience example so you can see that just about any kind of personal experience, even one that's relatively trivial, with good writing can be turned into a valid and impressive content example for any SAT essay. So let's go to page 91 and take a look at a second personal experience example. So our second personal experience starts on page 91, called Trip to Yosemite. So a third illustration of the notion that plans can always go wrong is seen through my experiences in the Boy Scouts of America. So this prompt, unlike the one we saw previously, which was every advance involves some loss, this prompt was, do the best laid plans of mice and men often go wrong? But once again, what is the prompt really addressing? It's addressing people that have overcome obstacles, achieved progress, and met challenges. Our basic motif. In other words, drama. You've got to have some drama in your content examples, and once you've got that, man, you can run with it. So, last summer, transition. I led a 30-mile backpack trip to the Yosemite Valley. For months prior to the trip, what's that called? When I have a long lead-in before I get to the main sentence?
Subordination.
I planned out the schedules, meals, equipment, parent volunteers, and the path that we would follow. Nice parallel structure, mark of a good writer. As the trip approached, what do we call that? Subordination. I was confident that it was going to be a great success as a result of all the planning I had done in advance. Time for a transition. Drama. However, transition. On the morning of the trip, something went extremely wrong. One of the father chaperones didn't show up because he thought the trip was a week later than it actually was. Consequently, what do we call that?
Transition.
Good. The T word, transition, mark of a good writer. Consequently, the number of adult leaders in the trek was cut down by 1, and the number of drivers that would take us to our starting point was reduced. We made do with 1 less supervisor, but the miscommunication had resulted in serious setbacks. That same word, setbacks, bad things. Nice use of that phrasing. So this personal experience is pretty straightforward, but why does it sound so impressive? Because of the writing style. Lots and lots of subordination, excellent transitions, parallel structure, and good detail. So that's what you've got to mix in to your content examples to secure a top scoring essay.